Imagine sitting at your own birthday dinner, surrounded by friends, family, and laughter, only to have the ground beneath you disappear. That's exactly where I found myself that night. The candles flickered on my cake, the soft glow dancing across the room, and I smiled at the people who had come to celebrate me. I thought it would be an evening of warmth, of joy, of small moments that would stick in my memory forever. But no one could have predicted what was about to happen. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Ryan, my husband of 8 years, stood up from his seat suddenly, a strange rigidity in his posture that made my stomach twist. He cleared his throat, and the room, which had been alive with chatter and clinking glasses, went silent. My friends froze mid-laugh, my mother's fork paused in midair, and I could feel the tension slicing through the soft hum of the restaurant. Then he said the words I'll never forget. "I'm in love with someone else." The statement hung in the air like a thunderclap. You might be thinking, how do you respond when your whole world shatters in front of you? Do you scream? Do you cry? Do you lash out? I did none of those things. I smiled. Not a trembling, fearful smile, but a calm, measured one. Because even as my chest tightened and the heat of betrayal burned, I had a plan. Now, you might wonder, who is she? That's the part that made this moment even more unbearable. She was sitting at our table, casually sipping her wine, smiling, completely unaware that she had just been named in front of everyone. The awkward tension could have been cut with a knife. I could feel the eyes of every guest shifting between Ryan and me, silently asking what would happen next. But here's the thing, this story isn't just about a birthday ruined or a husband confessing his affair. It's about the way I chose to respond, the envelope I had in my clutch, and the reaction that would shake the room. The night was far from over, and the shock was only the beginning. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever felt your entire life unravel in a single sentence? That's exactly how it felt when Ryan stood there, red-faced and defiant, confessing his love for someone else in front of everyone. The air felt thick, almost solid, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Everyone else, friends, family, even strangers at nearby tables, had gone silent, staring, mouths slightly open. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Part of me wanted to storm out, to scream, to shatter the fragile elegance of the evening. But I didn't. I had to see this through. I had noticed the signs for months. Late-night phone calls, secretive texts, sudden business trips, and subtle changes in how he looked at me. And yet, none of that prepared me for this, him declaring his betrayal like it was some kind of twisted victory. I could see Chloe, the woman he'd been sneaking around with, sitting there across the table. She looked clueless. The audacity of it made my blood boil. How could she be so calm, so casually present, while he publicly announced their secret in front of everyone? I caught her eyes briefly, and she froze. That tiny crack of recognition in her expression told me she hadn't expected the room to react this way either. I glanced around at my friends, my family, and even my mother, who had tears brimming in her eyes. Everyone was waiting for me to break, to crumble, to humiliate myself in front of them. But instead, I smiled. A quiet, controlled smile that made my chest ache with anger, but also satisfaction. Because even as my world felt like it had collapsed, I had a plan, a quiet kind of power that he had no idea about. And that's when I reached into my clutch, my hand brushing the envelope I had prepared weeks ago. The envelope that would make him see the consequences of every lie, every secret, every betrayal. He had no idea what was coming. But before he could even react to me reaching for it, the room seemed to hold its breath, and that's when I slid it across the table. What he found inside would leave him screaming like never before. Have you ever watched someone's face change in an instant, like the world around them just tilted and dropped away? That's what happened the moment I slid the envelope across the table toward Ryan. His fingers hesitated, hovering over it, unsure whether to pick it up or push it aside. The room had gone completely silent again, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion. I could see the flicker of curiosity in his eyes, that dangerous mix of arrogance and disbelief. He probably thought it was a note, maybe an apology, or some kind of dramatic gesture, but he had no idea what I had planned. Inside that envelope was every truth he had tried to hide, every lie he had spun, every dollar he had transferred in secret. And yes, I had documents to prove it. Months of careful preparation, keeping quiet, letting him think he was untouchable. But tonight, he wouldn't be. He opened it slowly, the tension practically vibrating through the table. I watched as his eyebrows furrowed, his mouth opening slightly, as if trying to form words, but none came. The first thing he saw was a bank statement, our joint account emptied, every penny moved without my knowledge. Then came a series of emails, text messages, and photographs linking him and Chloe in ways that made it undeniable. He looked like someone had punched him in the gut. Guests were leaning in, whispers fluttering like paper wings around the table. Some gasped, some simply stared, frozen. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, expecting some kind of emotional collapse, but I stayed calm. The contrast between his panic and my composure made it almost cinematic. I could almost hear my own thoughts echoing. How could someone be so blind for so long? How could he not see the storm he had invited into this room? And then it happened. Ryan's face turned bright red. His chest heaved, and he began screaming. Screaming at me, screaming at Chloe, screaming at the injustice of being exposed in front of everyone. But the envelope wasn't the only thing I had prepared that night. I had one final move, one last revelation that would make even his furious shouts fade into stunned silence. What came next would escalate the night beyond anything anyone expected, and it all started with a single slide of paper across the table. Have you ever watched someone implode in real time right in front of your eyes? That's exactly what was happening with Ryan. His face was flushed, veins visible on his neck as he yelled, pointing at the envelope like it had personally betrayed him. Guests were frozen, some whispering, others simply staring, unsure whether to intervene or let the drama unfold. And Chloe, she had completely lost her composure, her smile replaced with shock and fear. I stayed seated, calm as ever, letting the chaos unfold. Every scream, every protest, every desperate explanation he tried to shout only made the room tighten around him. And that's when I revealed the next layer of my plan, a slideshow on my tablet, set to automatically display evidence of his lies, his secret communications, and the extent of his betrayal. Photos, screenshots, timestamps, all neatly arranged. The moment I hit play, the room's atmosphere shifted from tense to electric. People leaned in. Eyes widened. Gasps echoed. Ryan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, his words faltering, scrambling to justify actions that were now impossible to defend. Friends whispered, some laughing nervously, while others covered their mouths in disbelief. It was as if every carefully constructed facade he had built over the years had been stripped away in a single, merciless stroke. And just when he thought he had reached the bottom, I paused the slideshow. I looked directly at him and said, "This isn't just about money or lies, it's about trust. And trust isn't coming back." My voice was calm, steady, almost too calm, which made the tension feel unbearable. Chloe shrank in her chair, realizing that she was as exposed as he was. Every guest at the table was silent, waiting for what would happen next. Then, the final slide appeared. The words glowed on the screen, "I have already filed for divorce." The room erupted into a collective gasp. Ryan's face went pale, his hands trembling. He stumbled back, his screams cut off, replaced by a stunned silence that was deafening. But the night wasn't over. What came next would cement the shock, turning this birthday dinner into a night no one would ever forget, and it all started with the envelope. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the restaurant lights and the soft clinking of glasses that no one dared touch. Ryan was frozen in his seat, face pale, eyes wide, staring at the words on the screen as if they were a verdict he hadn't anticipated. Chloe had bolted, leaving a trail of whispered apologies and the faint scent of perfume behind her. And me? I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, feeling a strange mixture of relief, exhaustion, and vindication. Have you ever experienced a moment where every piece of betrayal you endured suddenly became visible, undeniable, and irreversible? That was mine. Every late-night lie, every secret transfer of money, every whispered excuse, laid bare for everyone to see. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't throw a glass across the room. I simply let the truth speak louder than any words could. My friends and family began to react. Some reached for my hand, others simply nodded in quiet solidarity. They had witnessed the collapse of a man who had thought he could manipulate and deceive with impunity. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Revenge isn't about screaming or striking back. It's about reclaiming control calmly, deliberately, and with dignity. I stood, smoothing my dress, and addressed the room softly but firmly. Some birthdays are for celebration. Some are for reflection. And some are for liberation. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Ryan's protests had vanished. The fire in his eyes was replaced by stunned silence. And yet, this night wasn't just about exposing betrayal. It was about understanding that self-worth isn't measured by someone else's actions. It's measured by how you respond, how you protect yourself, and how you choose to rise after someone tries to shatter you. I walked out of that restaurant not with anger, but with clarity and strength. So, I ask you, if you were betrayed in front of everyone you love, how would you respond? Would you break, or would you take control, just as I did? Remember, power isn't in the shouting. It's in the silence, the strategy, and the courage to act with purpose. And that night, my birthday wasn't ruined. It became the night I reclaimed my life.